My fiancée tried to banish my dog to a shelter to make room for her sister's purebred show cat. So I called off the wedding, and a week later, the sister sold the cat and skipped town with my ex's emergency fund. My name is Ben. I'm 45, and I've been a widower for 3 years now. The silence in my house was a physical presence after Clara died, a heavy, suffocating thing that filled every room. My world, my anchor, my everything in that silence became a shaggy, clumsy, and endlessly loyal Old English sheepdog named Barnaby. He was a surprise gift from my wife, Clara, for my 40th birthday. She joked, her eyes twinkling, that he was to prepare me for going gray, a living, breathing preview of my future. She passed away from a sudden, aggressive illness that stole her from us in less than a year, a brutal, whiplash-inducing tragedy that left me and our home hollowed out. Barnaby was her last gift to me. In the darkest, most desolate days after she was gone, he was the sole reason I had to swing my legs out of bed each morning. He needed to be walked, fed, loved. He'd rest his heavy, warm head on my knee and let out a deep, soulful sigh, as if he were consciously sharing the immense, unbearable weight of my grief. Our little family unit had been whittled down to just me and Barnaby and the quiet, comfortable house Clara and I had bought together, filled with memories that were both painful and precious. It's a solid two-story place with a decent-sized, fenced yard, perfect for a big dog with energy to burn. My life had eventually settled into a gentle, manageable rhythm of work, long, meandering walks with Barnaby, and quiet weekends spent reading or doing household repairs, the kind of solitude I'd learned to coexist with, if not necessarily enjoy. I made a sort of peace with it, or so I had convinced myself. Then I met Sarah. She was 40, vibrant, sharply intelligent, and successful in her own right, and she swept into my carefully ordered life like a colorful, exciting, and slightly unpredictable storm. We met at a charity fundraiser my company was sponsoring. She was a freelance graphic designer, full of strong opinions and a kinetic energy that was both captivating and intimidating. She told me she found my quiet steadiness charming, grounding. I found her enthusiasm infectious, a welcome jolt to my system. For the first time since Clara's death, I felt a genuine flicker of something that wasn't just grief or grim duty. It was hope. She knew about Barnaby, of course. From the very start, she was tolerant of him. She wasn't a dog person, she admitted up front, but she said she was willing to try for me, to learn. She'd pat his head with a stiff, cautious arm, her smile bright but not quite reaching her eyes. Barnaby, ever the gentle, optimistic soul, would thump his tail enthusiastically against the floor, hoping for a proper scratch behind the ears that never, ever came. I told myself it was fine. I reasoned that not everyone is a dog person, that it was an adjustment. I held on to the belief that they'd eventually grow on each other, that given enough time, she'd see the wonderful, loving creature I saw. After about a year and a half of dating, I proposed. It felt like the right, logical step forward, a chance to finally build a new, happy chapter after so much sadness. The wedding was planned for 5 months out. I was cautious, but deeply optimistic, allowing myself to imagine a future that was full of light and laughter again. The main point of friction, aside from Sarah's persistently lukewarm reception of Barnaby, was her younger sister, Chloe. Chloe was 36, a whirlwind of dramatic, half-baked aspirations and minimal follow-through. Her latest passion, declared with the fervor of a religious convert, was breeding and showing premium Persian cats. She talked about them with the reverence most people reserve for fine art or their own children. She'd never held a stable job, floating from one get-rich-quick scheme to the next, always funded by their enabling parents or, increasingly, by Sarah. This was a persistent yellow flag for me, a constant, nagging worry in the back of my mind. Sarah was always bailing Chloe out of some financial or personal crisis. "She's just finding her way," Sarah would say, waving a dismissive hand, or "she's so talented, she just needs one big break." I chose to see it as a fierce, if misguided, sisterly bond, and as long as it didn't directly impact our lives under my roof, I could mostly look the other way. I didn't want to cause conflict over something I saw as her family business. Once we were officially engaged and the wedding plans began in earnest, Chloe and her feline obsession started featuring more and more prominently in our daily conversations. Her latest venture, grandly named Royal Paws Cattery, was apparently on the verge of a major breakthrough, but she desperately needed a stable, quiet, and rent-free environment for her prize queen, a cat named Duchess, who sounded more like a temperamental diva than a pet. The mentions started subtly, slipped into conversation like a knife. "Chloe's landlord is being so difficult about the number of cats," Sarah would mention over dinner. Or, "Duchess is such a sensitive, delicate soul. The vet says she needs a calmer, more predictable home to truly thrive." I'd nod, make non-committal, sympathetic sounds, and deliberately steer the conversation towards safer topics. My house had no room, physically or emotionally, for a high-strung, sensitive cat, and more importantly, it was Barnaby's kingdom, his safe haven. Introducing a creature like Duchess into his space would be a recipe for stress and potential disaster for everyone involved. About 5 months before the wedding, Sarah finally broached the subject directly, her tone light, but her eyes intent. "Ben, honey, I've been thinking. What if Chloe and Duchess stayed with us for a little while? Just a month or two, tops. Only until she gets the Caterer business properly registered and finds a permanent space. It would mean the absolute world to me, and it would really help her get on her feet." I shut it down as kindly and firmly as I could. "Sarah, you know I can't agree to that. This is Barnaby's home. He's not aggressive, but he's a big dog with a strong prey drive. It simply wouldn't be safe for the cat, and it would cause Barnaby immense stress. It's not fair to either of them. It's a hard no." She was quiet for a long moment, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then she forced a smile. "Of course. You're right. I understand." But the subject didn't disappear. It hung in the air between us for the rest of the evening, a heavy, unspoken tension that spoiled the entire night. A couple of months later, with the wedding now looming on the horizon, she brought it up again, this time with significantly more force and a hint of desperation. "Ben, we have a whole sunroom. It's just sitting there filled with a few plants. We could easily convert it into a beautiful, safe, enclosed sanctuary for Duchess. Chloe could stay in the guest room. It will be strictly temporary, I promise." The sunroom is Barnaby's favorite spot for his afternoon nap in the sun. I countered, my own patience beginning to wear thin. "He lies there every single day, and the guest room is where my sister's kids stay when they visit. You know as well as I do that having Chloe and her cat here wouldn't be temporary. It would be a permanent upheaval of our home and our peace." The answer is no, Sarah. Final. This time, it erupted into our first real, heated argument. Her voice rose, accusing me of loving my dog more than I cared about her family. My voice grew low and steady, but firm. I told her that Barnaby was my family, a living, breathing connection to my past and a non-negotiable part of my present and future. He was Clara's last gift to me. I said, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. This is his home. It is not a negotiation. The tension from that argument became a constant, low hum in the background of our relationship, like a faulty electrical wire. Sarah started making little, cutting comments under her breath. "It's just a dog, Ben, for God's sake." Or, Maybe if Barnaby was better trained and less shaggy, it wouldn't be such an issue. I found myself spending more and more time with Barnaby on our walks, the park becoming a sanctuary where I could try to clear my head and remember why I'd set these boundaries in the first place. Then, about 2 months before the wedding, she dropped the bomb that would ultimately detonate our entire relationship. She sat me down at the kitchen table, her face a mask of earnest, practiced concern, as if she were a doctor about to deliver a difficult diagnosis. Ben, I've been thinking long and hard, and I believe I have a solution that could work for everyone. She then laid out her monstrous plan with chilling calmness. We could send Barnaby to a really wonderful, highly recommended, no-kill shelter a few towns over. She'd done her research, she assured me. They specialized in rehoming older, larger breed dogs, she said. He'd surely find a nice, quiet home, probably with a retired couple who had all the time in the world for him and no complicating factors. Then, our home would be peaceful, clean, and ready for us to start our new life together as a married couple. And we'd finally have the space and tranquility to help Chloe and Duchess when they needed it most. She was actually beaming, so visibly proud of her perfect, logical solution. I felt the blood drain from my face, a cold nausea rising in my throat. I stared at her, utterly unable to process the sheer cruelty and audacity of the words she had just spoken. You want me to surrender my dog? The dog my late wife gave me on what would be one of our last happy birthdays together? To a shelter. She doubled down, her tone turning persuasive, almost sales-like, as if she were pitching a client. It's not a bad place, Ben. It's for the best, truly. Think about it. He'd probably be happier somewhere without all these complications. In this way, we can truly be a family, you and me, without anything holding us back. Chloe is my sister, my flesh and blood. She needs me. Duchess is her entire livelihood. This is what family does for each other. They make sacrifices. My family is right here, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerously quiet, controlled register. I gestured to Barnaby, who was snoozing peacefully at my feet, his great, shaggy side rising and falling rhythmically, completely unaware that his very existence, his place in his own home, was being coldly debated. This is his home. It's his only home. I made a promise to Clara to always take care of him, and I made a promise to him the day we brought him home that this was his forever family. I will not break that promise. Not for you. Not for anyone. She grew visibly frustrated, her composure beginning to crack. You're being sentimental and completely unreasonable. It's an animal, Ben. A pet. My sister's entire future is at stake here. If you truly loved me, if you were truly committed to us, you'd see that this is the only way forward. That was the moment the switch flipped irrevocably inside me. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I was ready to vow my life to in front of all our friends and family, had just revealed a core of breathtaking selfishness and emotional coldness that I had never truly seen before. The scales fell from my eyes, and all I saw was a stranger. She saw the finality in my expression, the complete absence of the love and compromise she was demanding, and she delivered her ultimatum. Her voice was flat, cold, and utterly final. Ben, you have to choose. It's me, our future together, and helping my family in their time of need, or it's the dog. It's that simple. If you can't make this simple, reasonable sacrifice for us, for our marriage, then there's no wedding. I won't. I cannot marry a man who prioritizes a pet over his future wife. I looked at her for a long, hard moment, and all the love, hope, and shared dreams I'd felt for our future evaporated, leaving only a cold, clear, and absolute certainty. I stood up, my chair scraping softly against the floor. You're absolutely right, I said, my voice unnervingly steady. There's no wedding. Her face crumpled from defiant anger to stunned, wide-eyed disbelief. What? What did you say? It's over, Sarah. The engagement is off. I want you to leave my house. Now, as if on some prearranged cue, Chloe emerged from the living room where she had evidently been waiting, holding a sleek, scowling, overly groomed Persian cat in a lavish carrier. She'd been there the whole time, presumably for the triumphant post-negotiation move-in. Whoa, Ben, that's seriously harsh. Chloe chimed in, her voice a nasal whine. Sarah's just trying to be a good sister. You're being totally unfair. I turned my icy gaze to her. Get out, both of you. Now. Sarah started to cry, but they were tears of shock and fury, not sadness. Ben, please, stop being so dramatic. We can talk about this like adults. Don't do this. We just did all the talking we're ever going to do, I said, walking calmly to the front door and pulling it open wide, letting in a blast of cool evening air. You gave me an ultimatum. I made my choice. Barnaby stays. You go. The scene that followed was protracted and ugly. Sarah oscillated wildly between weeping, begging, and lashing out with vicious insults. She said I'd led her on, that I was clearly still emotionally married to my dead wife, that I was using a dog as a substitute for human connection, that I was emotionally stunted. Chloe tried to argue and reason, saying I was overreacting and that I was tearing our family apart. I just stood there, holding the door open, a silent, unmovable statue. The man who loved her was gone. Finally, I told them calmly that I'd call the police and have them formally trespassed if they weren't out of my house in 15 minutes. That specific threat, the cold legal finality of it, finally got them moving with purpose. Chloe, grumbling under her breath, started aggressively gathering Sarah's things. Armfuls of clothes, expensive shoes, the Keurig machine she'd brought over, the half a dozen garish throw pillows that had slowly infiltrated my sober, masculine decor. Sarah was a hysterical mess, but I felt nothing. No pity, no regret, no lingering affection. It was as if a circuit had been severed. After what felt like an eternity, they lugged their suitcases, bags, and the ornate cat carrier out the door and onto the front porch. Sarah shot me one last, scalding look of pure venom before she turned away. I closed the door, turned the deadbolt with a definitive click, and leaned my back against it, finally allowing myself to breathe. The first thing I did, even before the sound of their car had faded down the street, was to call a 24-hour locksmith and have all the locks on my house changed that very night. Then I knelt down on the floor and buried my face in Barnaby's thick, warm, familiar fur, inhaling his comforting, doggy scent. He whuffed softly and licked my ear, his tail thumping a steady, reassuring rhythm against the floorboards. It's just you and me, buddy, I whispered, my voice cracking with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Just you and me. Always. The next day, I started the grim, tedious, but necessary task of canceling the wedding. The venue, the caterer, the band, the florist. I lost several $1,000s in non-refundable deposits, but it felt less like a loss and more like paying a ransom to get my life, my sanity, and my dog's future back. Telling my family and friends was difficult and awkward, but I kept it simple and vague. Sarah and I had a fundamental, irreconcilable disagreement about the meaning of family. It couldn't be resolved. Most people were shocked, but understanding. My true friends could hear the steel in my voice and knew better than to press for salacious details. Sarah called and texted relentlessly for about a week, a rotating carousel of angry, vindictive messages, followed by sad, pleading ones, and then back to furious accusations. I didn't respond to a single one. I read them with a detached curiosity, marveling at the person I had almost intertwined my life with. After a while, they simply stopped, and the silence that returned to my phone was blissful. Life slowly settled into a new, but profoundly familiar, peaceful rhythm. Barnaby, perceptive creature that he was, seemed happier, more relaxed, as if a pressure he'd been feeling had suddenly lifted. Our long walks in the park became even longer and more meandering. Our house felt like a home again, free of tension, judgment, and an excessive number of decorative pillows. About 2 months after the breakup, I got a call from a mutual friend, Lisa. She sounded strained and awkward. She told me she'd run into Sarah, who was in a truly bad way. Apparently, after I'd kicked her out, Sarah, in a desperate bid to prove she could make it without me and to provide for her sister, had used a significant chunk of her savings, including a dedicated emergency fund and some stocks she'd been forced to cash in early, to rent a small, overpriced, but pet-friendly apartment for herself and Chloe. The plan, according to Lisa, was for Chloe to finally get her Catara business properly launched from there and quickly start paying Sarah back. Then, just a week prior, Chloe had vanished. She'd sold Duchess to the first cash buyer she could find, completely drained Sarah's remaining bank account, maxed out her credit cards with cash advances, and simply disappeared. She left a scribbled note saying the whole cat breeding dream was a scam and that she needed the money to reinvent herself out west. Sarah was left utterly destitute, emotionally heartbroken, and facing imminent eviction, with no way to cover the next month's rent. Lisa didn't outright ask for money or help, but she heavily, painfully implied it, emphasizing over and over how completely devastated, betrayed, and alone Sarah was, how she had lost everything. And I listened. I listened to the entire sordid story. When she finished, I said, "That is a terrible situation." And on a basic human level, I suppose I meant it. Nobody deserves to be robbed, betrayed, and abandoned by their own family. But that was the absolute extent of my emotional engagement. I felt no urge, not even a flicker, to ride to the rescue, to be the bigger person, to offer a lifeline. If anything, I felt a grim, dark sense of validation coursing through me. She had chosen her conniving, pathologically unreliable sister over the stable life, home, and love I was offering. She had demanded I abandon a loyal, innocent creature who loved me unconditionally for that sister's frivolous, selfish dream. And that very sister had done exactly what her entire character and history dictated she would do. She made her bed with a snake. Now she was getting bitten. There was a brutal, poetic justice to it that I could not and would not ignore. A few days later, Lisa called again, this time more direct, her tone laced with a faint accusation. "Ben, she's literally about to be homeless. The eviction notice is posted. Could you maybe just help with a single month's rent? Just to give her a bit of breathing room? For old time's sake." I took a deep, slow breath, my grip tightening on my phone. "Lisa, the answer is no. A firm and final no." Sarah made her choices consciously and repeatedly. She chose her sister over my family. She asked me, demanded of me, to send my dog, a living, breathing link to my late wife, to a shelter. Her current, dire predicament is a direct and foreseeable result of that choice. It is not my responsibility, my burden, or my problem to fix. Lisa was silent for a long moment on the other end of the line, and I could feel her disapproval radiating through the phone. That's pretty cold, Ben. I never took you for a cruel person." "It's not cold, Lisa. It's realistic. It's self-preservation," I replied, my voice flat. "My responsibility is to myself, to my mental health, and to Barnaby. We're done here. Please do not call me again about this." I hung up the phone before she could respond and immediately blocked both Sarah's and Lisa's numbers. I needed a clean, surgical, and permanent break from that entire toxic chapter of my life. A full year has now passed since that final phone call. Life is, against all odds, genuinely good again. Barnaby is a year older, a bit grayer around the muzzle, a little slower on our walks, but he remains my constant, joyful, and devoted companion. I've poured my energy into my work, into maintaining my home, into finding a deep, contented happiness in the simple, quiet life I have deliberately built for myself. I haven't dated, haven't even considered downloading an app. I'm in no rush. The entire experience with Sarah taught me a brutal but invaluable lesson: to fiercely value my own peace and the sacred commitments I've already made above all else, especially above the tempestuous demands of others. I heard through the withered grapevine of old mutual acquaintances that Sarah did, in fact, lose her apartment. She apparently had to move in with a reluctant, distant cousin in another state, a humiliating step down for her. Her once promising graphic design business suffered irreparable damage from the personal drama and her own resulting unreliability, and she's now reportedly working a dead-end retail job just to get by. Chloe, as expected, is still missing a ghost. I was at a large, open park with Barnaby a few months ago, throwing his favorite frayed tennis ball, when I saw her from a distance. She was sitting alone on a weathered wooden bench, staring vacantly at a duck pond, her shoulders slumped. She looked a decade older than her years, her vibrancy completely extinguished. She didn't see me. I felt a pang of something. Not pity, not schadenfreude, just a distant, melancholy acknowledgement of a path not taken, a catastrophic bullet successfully dodged. I turned away, whistled for Barnaby, who came loping back with his ball, and we walked together in the opposite direction, toward the parking lot, toward our car, toward our home.